We are live.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call to order our Brawley City Council and successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency, our regular meeting for today, Tuesday, June 16th at 6 p.m. And we are continue to meet to maintain social distancing. We are using the Zoom capabilities, and we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. And let's see, forego the, is Alma there, or we can do roll call? Everyone is present. I'll just
The
acknowledge
record
it.
will reflect all council members present.
Okay. And before we approve the agenda, I understand there's a correction, Rosanna, that you'd like to make, or a change on the agenda?
There is under section 5, departmental reports. Item A should read, update on the emergency construction project at the Brawley water treatment plant to replace components of 2 sedimentation basins. We apologize for the erroneous listing of a prior emergency project that has since concluded.
Okay, so it's an update on the sedimentation basins at the Brawley water treatment plant. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and call for approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda with the mentioned change.
I'll second the motion. This is George.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. We had several documents in our consent agenda resolutions, and hopefully you had an opportunity to review those. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Sam.
Okay.
Second. George, go ahead. George, second.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. We'll go ahead and move on to regular business, item 4.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
If I may note, listed section 2 are public appearances and comments.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Let me go back to that. We did have a few public comments that I need to introduce to the record. Yes, section 2 under public appearances and comments, we did receive 3 comments from the public that I would like to just kind of summarize what they were, and we'll go ahead and file them on record for public review. One was from Crystal Duran, and the other from Judy Grant. Both expressed concerns regarding the closure of our library. And as you know, as the public understands, that the closure of the library was due to the result of the emergency situation that we're still currently in with COVID-19. What they're doing is expressing ways for us to have the public be able to access the library services. So the council will accept those and take whatever action may be necessary on that. And then we also received another public comment from Vicky Hernandez. She expressed a concern regarding traffic or speeding in the 200 block of A Street. And that concern was shared with our interim police chief, and that will also be addressed. And those were the public comments that were received. Did we have anything else?
If I could add something,
yeah, sure. Sure.
And so Victor Hernandez had reached out to me yesterday. She emailed me her comments, and it was with respect to A Street. She's expressed, or I should say she, but it's been expressed before by other residents on the traffic count and the speeding in that area. And so she just made a comment with respect to seeing if we can do something with respect to enforcement or even speed bumps just to slow traffic down. I know we have bike lanes in that area. I think those were striped in a few years back, but maybe just taking another look. I know obviously we're not in school at the moment, but the roadway is wide, and I know people do speed through there. We have periodically we do have those complaints. So anyway, just a further emphasis on that comment.
Okay.
Perhaps
Thank you.
we can move our relatively new speed speedometer machine, whatever we call it, but maybe that's something we could do fairly immediately.
Yes, it has been forwarded to the attention of Streets and Utilities, Public Works, and the Police Department. And we are developing a response to those concerns, including all possible measures noted in the discussion today.
Okay. Thank you, Rosanna. As far as the response to the two concerns regarding the library, will you be responding to those also, or?
So these particular items that were presented both by, we actually have 3 individual commenters. Those are Mr. Robert Reyes, Ms. Crystal Duran, and Ms. Judy Grant. So all of those letters have been received and placed on into the record, and they pertain to service level changes that are proposed in the draft budget per the workshop recently held. At the last presentation to the library board, which took place last week, it was unclear what our final date for budget adoption would be. And so in keeping with the previously scheduled budget calendar, they presented their comments. Some of the items referenced we'll definitely take another look at how we can accomplish during that period of July 1 to December 2020. And we'll certainly reference the concerns expressed and desire to continue to advance literacy in our community in the final budget presentation made in the next couple of weeks once that date's set.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our regular business, item 4 on the agenda. And we have a guest today. We're going to get an update by the film liaison, Charlotte Teeters. She's with the Imperial County Film Commission, and she's going to be updating us on the filming activities for fiscal year 2019-2020 and the effects of COVID-19. Charla, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me today. Thanks for the opportunity to address you all. These are definitely weird times and unprecedented in all walks of life, and that includes the film industry. Production was completely halted in mid-March, and as a few of the counties are starting to open up, including LA, there are a lot of different restrictions and guidelines and all those things that are coming into play, and I'll talk to you about those in just a little bit. But since production shut down, I have been connected with the California Film Commission, the Flicks, Teamsters 399, as well as other studios, and we're working hard to put best practices for safety and social distancing together. So when the time comes for production to commence, which again, some are starting that, and we are not able to do that at this point, the framework will be in place. But before we talk all the numbers and realities and stuff for the year, I'd just like to say how thankful I am to everyone in our local and county governments. You guys are working hard. You're making really hard decisions. And I pray for you all daily and appreciate your time and effort that you all put in. I have a roof over my head. I'm safe. My family is safe. I live in a community where, as best we can, we're supporting each other and taking care of our citizens. And so I just wanted to say thanks for all your hard work in this difficult time. Before COVID, there's BC and AC now. So before COVID, 1920 was actually one of our slower years. which was a surprise. If you look at the past 5 years, we've averaged around 100 productions for a year, so 8 to 9 productions a month. 1920, as of the end of February, that's where I've cut off my stats at this point. We had only seen 51 productions, and so that, 5 or 6 productions a month. The estimated economic impact of those 51 projects is right around $700,000. So still good, but lower than we've been in years past. The good news is that in March, we had 5 large productions set to lens, which either way you look at it, good or bad. We had different inquiries coming in every single day, right up until we had to close for COVID. So that was disappointing, but also encouraging at the same time. We had the TNT show Animal Kingdom. They were going to shoot a full episode in the Valley. Everything logistic-wise, everything, even starting to build sets and all that stuff was going. And then everything had to be pulled out at that point, which was a real disappointment because a lot of hard work had gone into that. The same with Wheeler Dealer and Top Gear. We had full episodes of those set to lens. We had a large photo shoot for a UK brand, Lucy and Yak set. We had an independent feature, a car commercial, and we were in talks with Mayans for coming back to shoot an episode. So we had a lot going on. We also had a major feature that I'm really hoping comes back and everything picks back up again. It would have been a large influx of economic impact to our area. So all those things were canceled because of COVID. The EEI on that would have easily been $2 million or more on just those few projects that I named. But what does the future look like for filming in the Imperial Valley? And what's being done during this time is what everybody is, probably more concerned with at this point. We're getting ready for Hollywood. It's going to reopen. They're going to come calling again. On a weekly basis, I participate in industry Zoom calls with my fellow film commissioners and the CFC and those other organizations that I mentioned earlier. And as we all know, this is a very fluid situation and no one knows exactly what's going on and what's going to happen. But it is felt that when production resumes, and again, in LA, they're starting to take applications, but no production is actually happening at this point, but it's going to start. But we do feel that it will start in the in-studio settings first, that controlled environment. But as new norms become better known practices, on-location filming will not be far behind that. Another factor that might push production out to our area is the fact that there is going to be such a scarcity of studio space in LA and those surrounding areas because everybody's trying to restart at this point, that they may have to push out to locations for some of the stuff they might have done in a studio. And with the diminished capacity and willingness to travel, especially overseas, we see a lot of production sticking around home and in California to film. We do have the white sheet from the various unions and guilds that have set forth COVID protocols for production. And so I'm reviewing those very carefully. When we do get to the point where we can start issuing film permits, we need to make sure that those productions are signing off and understanding what our health regulations will be in our county, as well as what is expected through the various organizations in California for filming. Currently, as the film commissioner for our county, I'm doing what I can to be proactive and prepare for production. I'm staying in contact with those productions that had to cancel and reminding them of our services and that we're ready and that we are the choice to come back to when they have that opportunity, and reminding them what our community has to offer and make sure they understand how simple we keep our permitting process and of the many vendors we have that are here, that are ready to serve as soon as we can safely. I'm updating the photo library, location lists, and honestly, I'm just trying to keep myself healthy and make sure that I'm ready and, you know, the strength and health when the wave starts to come in order to service those productions that come to the Valley. So cameras will roll again, the industry will continue to grow, and there will be filming in the Golden State again. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, just thanks for all your hard work and thanks for your time. So that's it.
Charla, I know that at one point you were planning an event out at the Salton Sea area. So that's been canceled, is right?
Yeah.
Or postponed or?
Any events right now have been canceled until a time comes where we can do things and plan things with some amount of certainty.
Okay. I know the last time we talked, you were still thinking that there was a possibility, I think, for the fall, but I didn't know if you had decided to cancel that or not.
No, I think fall is still, at least for production and some of those things, is still up in the air until we know and see Imperial County leveling out to a level where we can start bringing in people from other places and do that safely. We're at the moment, we're on hold. I am unemployed at the moment, basically. So I do what I can to keep up on things, but there's nothing, fortunately, for me terribly important.
Any questions from council?
No.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your hard work, and we're sorry that you're unemployed, and hopefully you're getting benefits.
I did.
You should be entitled to benefits. So
with them doing the PPP program for those that are consultants and stuff, that has been extremely helpful and
very good.
And a blessing.
Okay.
Charla,
Happy to hear.
thank you. Thank you for the update, Charla. I wish you the best. I really do. I know it's hard for everybody, and especially, right now for you in your position, the industry's at a halt. So thank you for the update, and I wish you the very best.
All right, and I'll keep you guys in the loop when things start to pick up again.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate your coming. Appreciate your participation. Thank you. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and move on to item 4B. And item 4B is an update on the City of Brawley declaration of local emergency, the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have our Fire Chief, Mike York, giving us a presentation. Mike, are you with us? Yes.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Mike York, Fire Chief. We'll start with an update of our local situation. These were the numbers as reported to the operational area EOC as of today. In our Imperial County, we have tested a total of 20,853 persons to date. Of those, we've had a negative count of 16,278. So our negatives are climbing up. A total positive count of 4,389. As of today, active cases is 982 within the Imperial County. Of those 982, 78 are currently hospitalized. So the vast majority are recovering at home, taking care of themselves, and one would think would be of less serious concern. Of the 78 current hospitalized, 18 are in ICU. And there are 0 ICU beds available between our two hospitals. That was the report today. Our surge capacity, which means our hospital's ability to flex and accept more patient, between both hospitals, we have 23 bed surge capacity. As of today, we are using none of them, which is a very good thing. Even though our ICU is full, we've been able to transfer out the critical patients, and our surge capacity is not being used. The other major component is the number of ventilators that are in use. Between both hospitals, we're using 34 of the available 76 ventilators, so just under half. Some good news, we've had over 3,000. We've had 3,300 persons recovered. To localize, and I don't have the breakdown, it's not available, but in the 92227, so the Brawley zip code, we've had a total of 735 positive cases. And then unfortunately, very sadly, today's count, we've had 52 people within Imperial County die because of COVID-19 or COVID-19 related complications. The 70 to 79 age group remains the most affected population for deaths. Information coming from south of the border. Our liaison at the operational area from Mexicali reported yesterday's numbers that they have 3,600 positive cases, 487 active, and unfortunately they have recorded 638 deaths. Their hospitals, their two major hospitals, are also reporting they're both over 80% capacity. After those numbers, what we're continuing to do here in the city, we're continuing to work with our local, state, and federal partners to coordinate a continued response to the pandemic, securing PPE and supplies, ensuring that those are delivered throughout the city and shared appropriately and equitably. The city departments continue to adapt to provide services within the health guidelines that have been set by the state and the county. And we're beginning to plan for service model changes internally and externally when our region moves to the next phase of reopening. The Imperial County is actually a region of very high concern at all levels. It's being monitored closely. In fact, the CDC is sending additional personnel into the area to assist with contact tracing and information gathering in relation to our very high percentage of positive cases. The Board of Supervisors has submitted a letter to Governor Newsom requesting advancement to stage 2B ahead of the recommendations, and I believe that we still have yet to receive official word regarding that. Governor Newsom did make mention of Imperial County today in the press release as being an area of high concern. And the most common question is where are we at in terms of our roadmap to recovery? The major criteria that the Imperial County is struggling with is the goal of having a 7-day average of less than 8% of persons positive versus the persons that have been tested. So theoretically, if we tested 100 people, we'd want 8 or less to be positive to meet that threshold. Currently, our 7-day average is sitting at 22.3%, so almost 3 times higher than the threshold value. Are there any questions related to the update that I can answer for any member?
Yes, I have a question. Sam,
Yes, sir.
what about the IVC facility? I'm hearing that it's full, but is that just rumor?
No, the IVC facility is open, it's staffed, they're still improving in their facilities. I don't have a count number for you this evening, but it has not been reported to be full.
Okay. That's the rumor. The rumor floating around in certain segments is that it's overflowing, it's full, everything's full, and that's a real problem. But from your report, it doesn't sound like we're quite at that level.
That
I'd
is
be
not,
happy to, I can pull from the report, Chief York, as you make your way through your item. I'd be happy to get that data point for the group.
thank you, City Manager. And we'll certainly include those counts as soon as possible.
Okay. That's the only question I had.
Okay, then Rosanna, can we move forward or you'll bring
Yes.
that? Okay.
Most certainly,
So-
we're ready for item B2.
Yes, we're on item B2 and we have a discussion and potential action to extend the local emergency by 60 days. And you have the backup on pages 27 through 29. And it's a resolution by the City Council to extend our emergency, local emergency status for another 60 days. I don't know did Mike want to cover a little bit more on that, or do we, I can just cover a little bit of the highlights. That pretty,
On this particular action item, Madam Mayor,
yes,
he is obligated every 60 days to review the status of the emergency and, if necessary, extend that period. So the item presented to the council this evening includes a timetable of another 60 days based on the health status of our area and the conditions that initially warranted the declaration.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add, Chief, on the resolution?
No, that concludes that. The resolution is an extension. We did have an update of language. I believe I cut out there for a second. I believe Rosanna covered.
Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to go ahead and approve the resolution.
I'll make the
George,
motion.
I'll make the motion to
Sam.
approve.
Was that George?
I think Sam beat me there.
Oh, Sam?
Okay, it doesn't matter.
I'll make a second.
Whatever.
Okay, Sam made the motion and George seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Madam Mayor, I do have the data requested. Our report date of June 14th has Imperial Valley College. There are a total of 125 beds noted as available, and the patient census on June 14th was 9 beds taken.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosanna.
Okay.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to item 4C on our agenda of regular business. Discussion and potential action to approve resolution number 2020, resolution of the City Council of the City of Brawley, authorizing and approving interim expenditures prior to the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 overall budget for the City of Brawley. And backup is on pages 30 and 31. And I believe Rosanna will be covering that.
Yes, I would like to begin with taking a moment to express my appreciation for the staff of our finance department who have been weathering some extraordinary moments of late and have adapted to some really different conditions over the last week or week and a half or so. And while we were a well-oiled machine ready to hit targets for budget adoption, we have experienced some temporary delays that will take us into July for budget adoption. And I hope to work both with the mayor and members of the council on that final date once we have some updates from our staff at a later time. So at this point, what we are proposing is an extension that'll allow for our city obligations to be fulfilled from a financial point of view when the calendar turns into the new fiscal year as of July 1. And I do hope to come back to you very, very soon with a new time frame for the overall budget preparation. We're not far from the finish line, and we certainly appreciate your patience given the times.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to approve the resolution to extend the time period for our budget, overall budget.
Also move.
George?
Second.
That was Luke.
That was Luke? Okay. Luke.
Second.
Second by Sam?
Sam.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Rosanna. Okay, moving on to item 4D. Discussion and potential action to approve resolution 2020, resolution of the City Council of the City of Raleigh, authorizing the application for the receipt of $150,000 in local early action planning LEAP program funds. And the backup is on pages 32 through 34. And I believe do we have Gordon covering this? Oh, here you go. Hi, Gordon.
How you doing?
Okay, Gordon, you're on.
Okay. Okay, Madam Mayor, council members, Gordon Gase, Development Service Director. This is another grant to assist in updating our housing element. As you know, we've already gone through the SB2 grant process and we were successful in receiving it. That one was also $150,000. This one, that one didn't allow for the actual housing. It's weird. State rules didn't allow for the actual housing element to be included. This one does. And what we'll also be using this money for is some additional zoning ordinance amendments. The previous one, we basically had accessory dwelling units and density bonus updates in there. This one will also include some multifamily design updates to bring everything in compliance with state law. It also helps update certain portions of our general plan with the housing element that are corresponding, like the land use element, the economic development element, how it ties in with housing. And also me and the consultant actually and the person from HUD realized we can actually even retroactively use some of that money to establish our environmental justice element, which I have been working on in-house. Just never got the opportunity to get to the end yet. But now we can kind of knock all these out at one time and have them all adopted together sometime, hopefully, but towards the end of next year, because this is a process that takes a while. And also it includes the environmental document for all of these, the housing element, the general plan updates, and the zoning ordinance updates, which basically I'll probably be doing that. So we'll be getting reimbursed again, probably about a third of this money, like in the previous grant, will be coming back to the city in lieu of our salaries.
Very good. Any questions for Gordon?
Nope.
Okay. And I'm looking for a motion for approval of the resolution.
I'll make a motion, Donnie.
Okay,
This is George. I'll second the motion.
George. Okay, motion by Donnie, second by George. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you, Gordon. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 4E, and that's the discussion and potential action to approve Resolution 2020, Resolution of City Council of the City of Brawley, adopting a list of projects for fiscal year 2020-2021 funded by SB1, the Road and Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. The backup and information is on pages 35 through 38, and we have Guillermo Cias to provide us with a report. Welcome, Guillermo.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council. Guillermo Cias, Public Works Director. This is in regard to the Senate Bill SB1, Road Repair and Accountability Act. And every year we receive some revenues for the purpose to use them under this act for maintenance of the streets. And this is the fourth year that the city receives SB1 revenues. It is estimated in the amount of $469,831 for the fiscal year 2021. And the streets that are being proposed for these revenues is the 2nd Street from Mainland Street to K Street, and H Street from Rio Vista Avenue to Las Flores Drive. And this will be necessary to use 2 different fiscal years to be able to rehabilitate those segments, because one of them, being H Street, is significant in length. And we're asking for your concurrence and approval to include these projects in the list to be adopted as a requirement of this act. Any questions that you might have?
Any questions
Nope.
from council? So this really doesn't have any effect on the projects that were already on our list. These are additions to that list. Is that correct?
These projects were included in last year, but due to the significance of the amounts to be required for the rehabilitation, we will need another year of revenues to be able to complete them. But they were included in this current fiscal year. 1920.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I may
Yes.
provide one other piece of information for council. So we have an overall street project list that
Mhm.
was first established when the city bonded LTA funds. And we have worked systematically to perform those projects in the LTA priorities. But as we completed projects, we basically utilized all the funds available on that front. So now we continue to work through the list with new funds as they become available. And the 2 streets that were selected for this particular project are ones that are on the list, the general list of priorities, and also are locations where we regularly send out staff to fill potholes. So you'll find when you drive these 2 particular segments, one is alongside Witter School on the eastern boundary of Witter School, and the other is a pretty, as referenced, a very wide roadway with a lot of pavement. So the cost of those improvements was so significant that we needed to basically use 2 years worth of revenues to accomplish the project with the dollars available.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information. Any other questions or from council?
Just to say that 8th Street repair, that's in very much great in need of repair. That street is in very bad shape. So I think that's a good thing.
Okay, looking for a motion?
So moved. Sam?
Sam? Okay.
Second,
Well-
Donnie.
Okay, motion by Sam, second by Donnie. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much, Guillermo. Let's see, is the next one yours too?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item 4F. And that item is the discussion and potential action to approve resolution number 2020. Resolution of the City Council amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget in the amount of $76,172.20 for development, street facilities to relocate the AT&T infrastructure. And the backup is on pages 39 and 40.
Yes, as Mayor and members of the council, you may recall that this expenditure is related to the undergrounding of the Best Canal in the phase number 2 that is related to Larigo Ranch development, in which Best Canal is necessary to be undergrounded. And the IID is participating with 75% of the expenditures. Eligible expenditures is what they call. And as part of this project, there are some facilities from utility companies that are in conflict with that second phase, which is Southern California Gas Company, AT&T, Spectrum, the cable company, and IID Energy Department. And this expenditure is identified for AT&T, where they have prior rights to be there, and as part of this pipeline installation. So it is required in order to provide services to Larigo Ranch to relocate these facilities. The gas company is doing something similar. Cable company is going to do the same thing, and IID Energy. But in this case, AT&T is charging us this amount to relocate these their facilities, and it is expected to be reimbursed by the developer due to all these utilities are providing services to Larigo Ranch. Any questions that you might have?
Any questions from council?
I have a question. So this is regarding AT&T. What the houses that are already out there, what do they have currently for phone services?
They have services. However, the facilities right now are in crossing the open channel for the best canal, but with this project, a big pipe will be installed at a different elevation that will be in conflict with the current facilities. That's the reason for all these utility companies to relocate their facilities. In one of those are AT&T, but they currently have services. However, in the case of IID Energy, in order to provide service for all the development, including the Unit 2 that is not being constructed yet, it will be necessary to upgrade the facilities and also relocate them.
Will we see similar requests by Spectrum and other utilities?
No, for example, gas company, due to the configuration of their facilities, they will be able to abandon the current conduits that are in conflict, and they will be, they have redundancy in other location. So it's not, they are not charging us anything for that. Spectrum, the cable company, they will be able to absorb the cost because they recognize the rights of the IID. And in the case of AT&T was different because they have a blanket easement, I'm sorry. And so they are not honoring the relocation.
And Paul, when we received the commitment from Imperial Irrigation District, they indicated that there were some ineligible expenses, and this is one of those items that is ineligible if there was a cost incurred in connection with the roadway improvement. That cost would have to be covered by other participating entities. It's not eligible for the IID's coverage of the cost. And what's presented to you this evening is the budget adjustment resolution to authorize us cutting that check. The project in and of itself for Wildcat is a long discussed priority of the council and an improvement that we are scheduled to perform. But these are the activities that are in connection with the undergrounding and ultimate construction of the roadway.
And this comes out of streets budget, or?
What we're doing is advancing the fees. I'm sorry, Guillermo.
Yes, development impact fees.
Okay.
But
But
I
it's
mean,
reimbursed.
it should be reimbursed, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And I mean, this kind of thing does not come as a surprise, right? This is something that's usually kind of anticipated for these type of projects.
Yes,
Well,
usually when there's other facilities, it is expected that some degree of conflict, but we didn't know until IID pothole and found the existing facilities and designed the pipeline at a certain elevation that was in conflict with them.
and we did explore, along with IID, the prospect of AT&T absorbing the cost, but because of the blanket easement and in consultation with legal counsel, we found that we didn't have the ability to exert or transfer that requirement to AT&T. There wasn't a franchise agreement that we could stand on or other means for us to gain their cooperation.
Did we ask AT&T?
Yes.
Okay.
We did.
And they said no?
Yes. We had both the involvement of our city attorney as well as IID's legal counsel. So we've explored all options to have that expense carried by other parties.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's still the possibility of us getting reimbursed. So
Right. I understand.
okay.
We'll find both with this segment, phase 2 and phase 1, that the types of funds that we gained access to assist with the improvement, there are certain items that are eligible for participation by the funding entities and some that are ineligible. So there'll be costs that come forward and are, when they're known, they'll be programmed as part of the project. Or in this instance, we didn't know the extent of the conflict till the actual field investigation was performed. And so we're coming to you with a request to authorize the expenditure. And if the council chose to not authorize it, then we wouldn't be able to move forward with the relocation for phase 2. So it's important. It's a critical path item to getting the roadway built.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, if no further questions, I'm looking for a motion. Anyone who,
I'll make the motion. This is Sam.
okay, Sam, make the
I don't
motion.
like it. I'll make the motion.
And
I have
I'll
a second.
begrudgingly second it along with Sam, Luke.
I think AT&T should have absorbed the cost, but that's just me.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We're gonna go ahead and move on to departmental reports. And I guess it's Guillermo, you're still with us. This is an update on the sedimentation basins at the Brawley water treatment plant. Right, correct?
That's correct. The emergency continues. The trough, which are the channels where the sedimentation basin discharge. The trough of the sedimentation basin number 2 were installed and working last Saturday, June 13. There are some issues with them due to the water that are carrying is filtering through the nuts and bolts. They will be adjusted or repaired when the contractor returns to install the troughs at basin number 1. Currently, the basin number 2 is in testing period for 14 to 30 days, and both basins are fully in automatic operation. The date of project completion is scheduled to July 13. However, we might complete the project before that, depending on the testing. And so everything is going according to plan.
Okay,
Any questions?
okay,
So the plan is fully operating as normal.
very good.
The bottom
Very
line.
good. Happy to hear that. Thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 5B. Departmental report on the emergency replacement of the 3 failing air conditioning units at the Brawley Police Department. And it's presented by our interim police chief, Scott Shepard. Welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome, Chief.
Madam Mayor and council members. So I thought this would be done. The air conditioners have been signed off by our building official, Oscar Escalante, but when the second crane came to install one of the big AC units, it damaged some landscaping. So the contractor has not repaired the landscaping, but we expect that to be done soon. There was a guy out here working on some of the drip emitters for our new plants, the new landscaping out front last Wednesday, but apparently they haven't fixed all the underground areas that were damaged. Some of the, it's just some of the piping for the irrigation, but that'll be done soon.
When they damaged the landscape in the AC company, did you tell them not cool?
We took photos and he said he would have it repaired, but still to today, it hasn't been completed.
How long has that been? Like 60 days now?
I would guess about a couple months.
Yeah, let's make sure that we're on that, because the more time passes,
The list.
the less likely things get fixed.
Yeah, so he hasn't been paid yet, and he's indicated to us twice in the last 2 weeks that he wants to get compensated for the project, but we go back to the landscaping part, and he said he's going to make sure that gets done.
Yep, okay.
I don't know if holding payment for that amount, though, would be maybe partial payment or something like that.
That's
Just
probably,
to get them,
yeah.
but certainly needs to get the work done. Or I don't know how if this is appropriate or not. We could just have it done and deduct it from the payment. I don't know if that's even a possibility or not. But
Yeah, that's also a possibility. But so as far as the air conditioners themselves, it was on Friday when I spoke to Oscar that they had completed the checklist that he had concerns about. So the air conditioners are good to go as of Friday, and we'll work on the landscape and what our options are.
Okay.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief, for that report. Good, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to item 6 on our agenda. And that's the city council member reports. And we'll go ahead and start with Councilman Sam, since you're right up there in the corner.
Well, okay. As you know, not much has been happening. Haven't had too much going on. Not much has been happening lately. I do have a meeting with a gold mining company that maybe is going to be out near Ogilvy Road area, and in that area, they're supposed to meet with me. I think just to introduce themselves. I don't think that they're planning anything real soon, but just a brief meeting with them. I do have something scheduled with them. They may meet with other council members. I was approached by a person that's been hired as their consultant locally, and I think they just want to meet and greet, and that's going to be it. We're going to do it by Zoom, so I can't go anywhere to see them. I'll do a Zoom meeting with them, see what they need, and I'll follow up with the council on anything they might request. I don't know that there'll be anything, but I think it's more just introductions, but we'll see. And so I've got.
I'm sorry, did you say there was a gold?
Yeah, some type of gold mining company, yep.
Okay.
And I don't know the extent of it. I don't even know any of the details yet, but as I acquire those, I will come forward to you, Madam Mayor, and the rest of the council, and ensure that we do all receive the same information.
Okay.
They may want to talk with you in the future. I think they're setting up some appointments, and I happen to know the consultant, so he called me. And so that was just something, just a brief meeting. So that's what we're going to do by Zoom, because we can't do it any other way. And so, and I think they're from out of town anyway. So that's what's going on. Other than that, I'm just happy that the city's running the way it is. The news is wild out there, as you know, the national news and all the news around the country. And Brawley seems to be fairly quiet. So I'm appreciative of that. And maybe that's the reason why we live here. I'm appreciative of the city staff continue to operate everything. I think we found out that a window for payment at fiscal is a good idea. I think that would. I try to tell people here in Brawley, we like direct person-to-person contact, and that's just the way we go. You know, that's the way it goes. A lot of people don't have that ability to do it any other way, and so I think that it's important that we keep those things at least operating as best we can. And I appreciate the staff and everybody stepping up to the plate. I know everybody's working under a lot of pressure and under a lot of stress, and hopefully we get through this fairly soon. So, and that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Couchman. Let's see, we'll move on to Councilman Nava.
Did we lose George?
No, I'm here in a tropical paradise, so I wanted to make sure that
He was changing his screen. He wants
I
to
was changing my
imagine.
screen.
Whoa.
So I see that Luke had this, portrait behind him, so I wanted to be like Luke,
Are you in a 14-day quarantine in that island?
Yeah, I'm here at the near the ocean here. Hey,
You're being creative.
so I received several calls from different business owners with respect to opening plans for the city of Brawley. Obviously, Imperial County's in the news. It's been mentioned by the Vice President of the United States. And so I know that our circumstances here in Imperial County are not very good with respect to our case count, mortality rate, all those other things. So obviously that's going to remain a concern until things clear up. And from what I understand too, I think traffic back and forth, international traffic has been restricted once again. So there may be, some other issues that arise from that with respect to local agriculture and business and that sort of thing. But anyway, I have been approached by some people that are in business here locally in Brawley. And they also talked to me about recently that they've had some success in being able to obtain some very significant amounts of SBA loans. So because of the COVID restrictions and everything else, so that at least in that aspect, it's a good sign. So I've had that conversation multiple times. So those are things that have been ongoing over the past, I'd say, past couple of weeks. I've had more calls recently from business owners with respect to opening, and quite honestly, not everybody's in favor of that. Not all business owners are. So, and I think it may be because they were able to obtain some funding, some business funding from the SBA. That's helped ease their desire to open and when things are not entirely safe. So, we'll see how that plays out over the next few weeks. Maybe there's others that will apply for funding and they're able to receive it. But regardless, I think it's really important that we help our business owners as things open up and progress. Another item that has come up recently, and I had a conversation with the mayor yesterday, Mayor Norma Howdigi, and we spoke about something that that I addressed recently, not to pat myself on the back, but I'll give my son credit. He helped out tremendously. But where my office location's at on G Street, the 500 block of G Street, the small alleyway had been neglected for a long time by the neighbors, and it just hadn't received a lot of attention and care. So we decided to clean it out ourselves. It was a lot of work, just the two of us. But I would like to thank our city manager and Republic Services for providing the disposal of that material that was in the alleyway. But it brought up another topic that we have, and that is just the weeds and dry weeds everywhere. And I hate to bring it up in the form of being critical, because it's not a city issue. It's an environment issue. It's a resident issue, right? And so there's a lot of weeds that have been dried out. I know we had heavy rain a few months back, but if you look down, just about anywhere throughout Brawley, there's just dry shrubs and weeds. So if we can come up with something. I know in the past we've had prison crews. I don't know what that's like today. I mean, that was a long while back, but we need to be able to do something to help improve our community, just aesthetically. I'm starting to see, obviously, more graffiti. I've seen some more recently. And so we're going to have those troubles again. And I know we have financial difficulties laid out before us. So there's a lot to consider. I don't mean for it to come off as negative, but things that we just have to consider and look to see how we can help resolve. But I think it's also important to hold business owners and residential owners responsible for their own properties too. I think that's really important, because I see some properties out there that look in awful shape. There's, weeds that are 2 feet high, 3 feet high, surrounding entire buildings, and it just makes everything look worn. And these are occupied buildings. So anyway, I'll rant and rave all night if you let me, but I did want to bring that up because I think it's just something that just needs to be addressed sooner than later. So those are the things that are happening. Obviously, with all the restrictions with COVID, there isn't a whole lot of events or interaction, but a lot of phone calls, certainly, and emails and other things. So I know that was a little long, but I did want to share that with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Nava, for sharing that. Yeah, there was I'll share a little bit more when I do my part on that also. Let's see, Councilman Wharton.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just recently, a little bit of wearing my other hat, kind of my work in the pre-hospital ambulance industry, but did a interview with Desert Review, and it was really subsequent to a lot of questions that I really get on a day-to-day basis around the Valley's status that the chief updated and briefed us on. Along those same lines, just sharing with the rest of council and certainly the public that certainly with the surge and everything we've read about in the paper, we remain quite busy in getting sick or critical patients out of the Valley, perhaps to not just higher level of care, but in some cases we're finding even challenges depending on the day even on the receiving end. But at the end of the day, we are fortunate as much as we're a few hours away from a higher level of care, primarily in San Diego, but as well as other parts of LA and Palm Springs, that patients are getting to where they need to go. And I know that helps alleviate some of our numbers and our ability to care for patients here locally. So just thought I would share that. And outside of that, I did participate. I actually went to an event that had some social distancing. I say that because it was an outdoor event, but short notice, a memorial 5K run was put together in honor of El Centro Officer Coronel. And so I did go down and participate in that. It was kind of warm, muggy. It was, kind of tough conditions, but certainly a good cause, and it was a great opportunity to see the law enforcement community here in Imperial County come together, as well as members of the public, in support of Officer Cornell and his family. So in his memory and his service, of course. Outside of that, I guess I'm assuming our next meeting is going to be after the 4th of July. So with that, I would certainly hope the public, remains, as we always communicate, safe and sane. And I know we have all our usual mitigation measures in place, but I do just remind the public that please be mindful of homeowners with their pets, with those that are probably in particular sensitive to that type of noise between now and then. So I just make that that comment, to the public. But other than that, Madam Mayor, that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Wharton. We'll move on to Mayor Pro Tem Hamby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening to my fellow council. Over the last couple of weeks, I had the opportunity to converse with several people about issues that are kind of cropping up in the city. George mentioned one, and certainly we got a lot of feedback on the library, as it pertains to shutting that down altogether. And I attended a library board meeting last week, and I was impressed with how fruitful the conversation was with the board members there. They had a lot of good ideas for being able to provide some kind of services to the city of Raleigh, in the way of literacy and library support, and for curbside and for zip books and that kind of stuff that people can access without being able to walk into the facility. So I am hopeful that we'll be able to do something along those lines, and obviously it's a concern even to members of the community. I fielded a couple of calls about some Parks and Rec issues, one being some new trees that had been planted above cattle call along Cotton Rosser, and forwarded those on to Rosanna, and I think those were being taken care of. But it was nice to see the new trees going in there, some beautiful jacarandas and some others that will be, as they grow, are going to be a really nice addition there. I attended a presentation at Pioneers toward the beginning of the month. That was an appreciation ceremony for the National Guard medic team that had been there. And it was a very nice little informal presentation, and I got to speak directly with a few of the members of that team. And they were just very gracious, very hardworking people who had, basically volunteered for this duty because they knew it was going to be hands-on. Some of them had some connections to Imperial Valley one way or another in history. So that was a very nice ceremony that that the Pioneers Board put together for the National Guard. I wanted to wish a happy anniversary to the mayor and her husband. That was this past week, I guess.
It was a big one.
You guys must have got married in your teens.
Yeah, we did. Right. I shared that before. Yes.
And also wanted to just express my gratitude to the community that really gathered around and supported us this past week. We were able to finalize the adoption of our son, and that's been a long time in the works, and so we're very happy about that. Very excited. You've all met Bennett, our 3-year-old, and he's been in chambers there once or twice, so he leaves a mark wherever he goes. He's quite a kid, so we're very happy and excited at our house. And there's a lot of difficult and bad situations that have come out of COVID, but there are definitely some things to be thankful for. And one of those has been spending a lot of extra time with my family. So I'm grateful for that. And that is all I have to report tonight.
Well, congratulations on that. We're real happy for you.
Yes.
Elizabeth and Bennett. Yeah. Okay. My report, let's see, a couple of things about the local, I haven't been able to get out too much, but I did see it actually on Facebook. And I think one of the times that I drove around the back of the City Hall, that I did see that new business is going in where Busy Bee used to be. And apparently it's a new hardware store. And the new owner posted on Facebook that he was going to be opening. I'm not sure when exactly, but we wish that business really good luck and success. And then I did see a presentation by Bill Gay, who was part of that Imperial Valley Business Task Force. And apparently they developed, I think I shared before that there was a reopening plan that was posted on the state website for the businesses that are planning to reopen. And they developed a poster already so that it can be distributed to any businesses that are ready to reopen. And I was going to share with Rosanna to see if maybe we could follow up with Bill Gay if he hasn't dropped any off with us. He has? Okay. Because I think that would be a really huge help for the businesses. It was a pretty lengthy document, so with them providing that poster will be a lot of help for them. And as far as the cleanup, yes, George and I did talk about that, and we both agreed that, I mean, you just need to, you take a drive around, and some of those are pretty soon they're drying, and so much so, and they're big, that a little wind is going to knock them off where they are, and they're going to be floating around in our streets. So we were going to discuss that a little further, and like George mentioned, I don't know if the prison crew thing might be something for the future that we can look into. Of course, not right now with the COVID situation, but possibly we may have to maybe lead some volunteer crews or something to do some cleanup, to make our city look nicer, some of the neighborhoods. So something that we could probably venture into in the near future. And I did, Rosanna, I believe, Rosanna, you were on the call today too. And so the call was with representatives from our state capital from Sacramento regarding our situation with COVID and our economy and how we're being affected. And they did share some information. They did indicate that that CDC is currently on site, and so they are here. They're looking at all their cases, and they're trying to do some kind of analysis to find out why we have, I guess, so many positive cases. They did touch on the fact that they are helping our hospitals. They're looking to add 20 additional beds to our hospitals to help with the numbers that they need there. And they did share that they had transferred over 450 patients from our cities. So I'm pretty certain that Donnie, maybe Reach was involved in that, but I was surprised at the numbers. But they are taking the patients to different parts of California, as far north as, I think they mentioned Santa Barbara as one place, and further up. So I was really impressed with the state representation. I really do think that they are seriously taking our situation at heart, and they are helping and trying to help us as much as they can. The request that went up to them of us moving forward, though, on the roadway to recovery, according to the representative from Sacramento, he says we're not there yet. So, they're just going to try to see how they can assist us with reducing the number of the positive cases. All the information that we've talked about was shared with them, our proximity to Mexicali and the issue with the people crossing the border, the issue with our proximity to Yuma and Yuma being open to all the businesses, San Diego being open to businesses, Riverside County being open to businesses, and how people they're tired of being home and they'll go out to these businesses and maybe bring the virus back. We don't know, but those are all things that are, being looked at. Let's see what else. They did indicate that they don't want to close the door, that they want us to work with them. And they know that our region needs assistance, so they want to plan to work with us. And Assemblymember Garcia also indicated that he understood the issues that we have here with the COVID-19, but he stressed to the state representative how we're going to really need assistance with the economic recovery, more so than other counties. So he indicated that he would like to see twice or 3 times the assistance for the recovery of our businesses in Imperial County. So he's going to be assured to do whatever he can to help us with the economic rebounding that will have to take place. And I think I mentioned that the National Guard is still here. They plan to be here at least until July. And they indicated that there is a commitment on the state to support us however they can with medical supplies, testing equipment. And they talked a little bit also about the screening at the border. They're working also with the Customs and Homeland Security to see if they can help us in that respect. Then there was some discussion about the crossing of the border and how the numbers, less people coming will help our numbers, but it's also affecting our economics in a negative manner also, because less people are coming to buy in Imperial County. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. They also indicated that they are going to start working on a public information campaign to educate our public and educate all our communities to see if maybe with that, it'll help in people following, our community members following the guidance, and hopefully that will improve our numbers. But like I said, I think I was impressed with the fact that they are looking at us and they're willing to help us. So it was a positive meeting. Okay, and that's my report. So we'll go ahead and move on to City Manager report. Rosanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple of items before I jump to the staff direction, and it's based on some of the comments that I've seen posted online with our live feed on Facebook, and also a couple of other updates that might be of interest to the council and community. I recently had the opportunity to join in a town hall with the Imperial County Association of Realtors. It was with an invitation from our council member, George Nava, and the Government Affairs Committee of the Association of Realtors. It was a really great chance to hear about kind of where the market was right before the emergency declaration, what's happened in this last 60 to 90 days, and then what some of the projections are for going forward as financing opportunities have shifted and demand and availability are examined. So it was a really neat chance to hear industry insight. And I'm sure Councilmember Nava has some thoughts to share as well. I honestly thought it would be a very small gathering of just committee members, and it turned out to be in excess of 40 people on a Zoom call. So it was a great chance to demystify some of the COVID-related information that's swirling about what can and can't be performed as businesses. And it also gave all of the local agencies who participated, as well as the health department and county, the chance to kind of talk through what the next stages would look like with the state's action to approve a variance. So it was a really, really wonderful chance to open the doors of communication, and I'm hopeful that the city will be able to pursue more dialogue in the future, and there's some chance for exploration of joint opportunities.
Rosanna, if I could just add a comment. Thank you, first of all, for participating. A lot of good information. I thought your comments were spot on with respect to what the city of Raleigh is going through, and everyone appreciated that very much. So I got a lot of feedback from that as well. So thank you very much. But I do want to let just the public and the county, the listeners know that you know, the real estate industry, the association itself between affiliates and members is over 300 strong here in Imperial County. So they represent, you know, buyers, sellers, investors from throughout the Imperial County. And so what was shared with us, and Rosanna was on that Zoom call, was just some of the figures that, you know, in comparison to, for example, last year, you know, and what the trends are right now. So you got to keep in mind, every house sold in the city of Brawley's investment, every business facility, every, you know, commercial location that's sold is an investment. And so that's money spent here, whether that's financed money or whether that's cash that's invested, that is an investment in our community. So just I wanted to thank you, Rosanna, and just comment for the rest of council. Sometimes we don't realize that real estate is such a big investment, but with real estate comes other dollars, right? If it's a commercial building, it's going to, you know, be business dollars that are spent or generated. If it's residential, those are, you know, other consumer goods, maybe vehicles, maybe, you know, other things that are spent within our community. So just food for thought, I think is really important. And the industry, I mean, for a good 70 days, 65 days, it was really challenging with COVID. And I refer to before COVID, just like Charlotte does, I call it BC, you know, before COVID. Very, very different environment as opposed to today, in comparison to today. Rates are low today. It's much easier to finance today than it was 60 days ago. So a lot to look forward to. Anyway, just again, sorry to interrupt, Rosanna, but I did want to thank you and share those comments.
I think the optimism of the group was a breath of fresh air as we all kind of navigate some really challenging times. So thank you for that opportunity and look forward to continuing the dialogue. I also wanted to provide a brief update on a couple of roadway projects. You may have noticed that a temporarily delayed project with the onset of COVID-19 on Allen Street has resumed as of this week. And so I want to express our appreciation in advance to residents who are obviously experiencing some short-term inconvenience. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with the contractor to restore daily access to the site and to those individual residences. So looking forward to that water line being improved, as well as the surface improvements in the roadway being accomplished in an area with chronic water breaks. So looking to see that enhancement completed in the very near future. Also wanted to note that Legion Road, I saw a posted comment from one of our residents regarding phase 2 of Legion Road and what is the status. We will have an update very soon, and in fact, as soon as next council meeting. So looking forward to providing you with an update at that time on the status of the bidding process for phase 2 of the project. And once that is complete, as council is aware, we did secure funding for phase 3, which will extend to western city limits on Legion. And that project will follow phase 2 almost immediately, and look forward to kind of a part of Brawley that hasn't had attention from a roadway point of view for quite some time, with a lot of increased housing construction and occupancy. There'll be a much smoother road to access all those homes in the not so distant future. So Public Works will be very busy as Allen Street and Legion Road improvements continue. The next item I wanted to report out on is with reference to Republic Services. This year with COVID, unfortunately, our regular community cleanup day that is extended as an opportunity to all of our residents, we have to put it on hold. So Republic has expressed ongoing openness for any local community group or neighborhood group or committed community member who wishes to take on a project, like both our council members, Luke Hamby, along with our fire chief, Mike York took on in his neighborhood, or Councilmember Nava and his son took on just off of G Street. Those opportunities are definitely available, and if either the council or any members of the community are interested in pulling that together, staff are ready and available to coordinate with Republic Services as we kind of try to fill this gap between the bulk items that a lot of people, perform cleanup projects on their properties twice a year, knowing that that community cleanup day is coming and they can go and take all their items all at once. We are open to alternative arrangements and making that happen through Republic Services. And then the last non-listed item that I wish to note is relative to an opportunity today that was possible with the County of Imperial. The county has been trying to work with cities on how to best position our businesses for reopening in the post COVID-19 era. And so as later stages of business openings become possible, certain guidelines have been published by the state of California as to how these businesses can safely operate. And today we had the opportunity, some members of our staff were able to join with the county to work with a local business to do a walkthrough as kind of a case study for if you were going to reopen, what are the measures that you could undertake that are cost efficient and accomplish addressing the guidelines that are necessary. So we did have the opportunity to work with Las Chavelas restaurant, and Mayor Kastner Howdegi helped us to secure the participation of the operators. And it was a very, very fruitful exercise in that it gave, the operator was provided a copy of the state guidelines, which are lengthy. Everybody says the same thing. These are lengthy and hard to navigate. How do I interpret? And what often happens is people call the city staff and say, can you give us some help? Typically what we would do is say, this is outside of our bailiwick. You'll need to approach our county agencies. But the county is expecting that there will be more questions than they can humanly answer. So the more awareness there is, both in the business community as well as local agencies, the better equipped we are to get people back on their feet with some of the guidance that they need. So this is really approached from an education point of view, not a regulatory approach at all. And we are very, very grateful for Las Chavelas being willing to work with us to both look at in-house dining, the bar setting, outdoor seating, all these areas that you're hearing talked about in the news for indoor dining that at some point will be restored in our communities, hopefully sooner rather than later. Will be well positioned to assist our businesses with being successful in that realm. So our thanks to Las Chavelas for their assistance with providing the location for us to learn from. And right before this council meeting tonight, I did have some follow-up from the Imperial Valley Business Recovery Task Force. There is certainly interest in other businesses. They were reaching out to inquire if that service might be available to other operators. And so we will definitely be following up. There might be another business type that's out there that is interested in kind of free advice on how can they best prepare and be ready for their doors reopening. And we're looking for kind of different types of businesses, so the experience we can build upon So if there are any businesses out there that the council has in mind for follow-up, we'd be glad to extend that opportunity to them. Or if anyone's listening in on the meeting today, please give us a call here at City Hall, and we'd be happy to see what we can do to assist.
Rosanna, speaking of listening in one of the comments, Preston Hutchinson says, barbers and salons closed down, yet George's hair looks flawless. So Preston, shout out to you. Thank you. You know what's up.
Some of us don't look as good, but we'll be glad when they reopen. Okay, so the item that we have listed on the agenda under City Manager Report is actually a long lead item that has quite a bit of history, and it is with reference to the upcoming election. In the backup for today's meeting, you saw on the consent agenda the actions that are necessary to hold a consolidated election along with the County of Imperial. And you may recall that due to state law changes, now all of our local elections have to happen in an even year, and all of our ballot measures as they relate to a tax also have to happen in an even year. And so given that we've got a cycle that we're on the beginning days of for November 2020, what I'm hoping to do is sketch a couple of key features that have been raised in the last 12 to maybe 24 months. And it's not to advocate for any one of these ideas, but simply to refresh council's memory on a number of presentations that have been made to the body, advocacy efforts that have been undertaken by certain groups to advance certain concepts. And some of these, occurred long before COVID. We even knew it existed and may not be the appropriate timing for November 2020, but I thought it would be helpful to identify those. So council may recall a presentation that was made by the Brawley Chamber of Commerce. That discussion centered around ways in which the city could support ongoing economic development and the efforts of that entity. And at that time, one of the information points that was really emphasized was whether the TOT could be redirected to support the operations of the Chamber of Commerce. The TOT is a transient occupancy tax. It is currently set at 8%, and it represents, on average, in a given year, let's see, about $400,000 in a fiscal year. Now, we know we're going to be experiencing some unusual revenue changes in the fiscal year that we're currently in, because some of our motels are being used for longer term stays, and longer term stays are not eligible for TOT. I raised TOT because the way the discussion went before the council with the Brawley Chamber, at that time, the council raised the prospect of an increase in the TOT. So that would be people who are coming theoretically from out of town to come and stay in Brawley. The tax that's associated with their short-term stay, it was proposed that that could potentially be increased, and that increased amount would be something that the city may be open to conveying or contributing to the chamber to support its economic development effort. So the first potential ballot measure topic that I wanted to note was the TOT. Following that discussion, there were also a great deal of dialogue that entered many of our council meetings over the prior fiscal year regarding the city's sales tax rate. And you may recall that these issues very specifically surfaced relative to wanting to create desire from certain stakeholders to create a revenue source that could assist with the costs associated with public safety. There was no specific direction given on this, just as with the TOT, but there was a very active exploration of what sales tax is in the city, what it could look like with an increase. And just for easy reference, our current sales tax is set at 7.25%. And then on top of that base rate is a 0.5-cent sales tax that's tied to Measure D. So that's our local transportation authority funds that funds roadway and transit. That's that 0.5%. So in the city of Brawley, the sales tax rate is 7.75. The suggestion was that the city, if we needed to generate revenues, that maybe the city should look at increasing the sales tax. So that's the second type of ballot measure that's being noted for council's recollection. And then the third area is the utility user tax. And as you know, the city has a long history with the utility users tax. It is currently set at 4%. And in the last renewal process that occurred, the city had the opportunity to consider both the timetable and expiration date, as well as potentially modernizing the language of the ballot measure so that it could consider different types of technologies, because the traditional model was looking at formats that just aren't that common anymore. And therefore, the revenue source is a declining revenue over time. People don't have landlines in their homes very often any longer. And so things like cell phone technologies were discussed, as well as looking differently at cable alternatives becoming more antiquated, and different ways of approaching that in the future. At the time, the council did give direction with the last renewal to keep the language as is and to continue on with a sunset. And as it stands, the utility user tax is actually scheduled to expire in 2022, and it's May of 2022. So really the one window for a renewal in advance of expiration is in November 2020. So as noted, we have three topics that staff wishes to point out have been part of active discussions: the increase of the TOT, the potential increase of the sales tax rate, and the utility user tax. These are three potential ballot measures, or and the council may choose to not pursue any of them. For the sake of today's discussion, my hope is to simply jog memories and begin to get the type of direction staff will need in order to get any ballot language. If it does proceed, that ballot language needs to be acted on by the council in the month of July. So direction will be needed tonight or very soon. Aside from those three topics, I also want to point out one other potential ballot measure topic that has been discussed from year to year, and that is taking a look at the office of the city clerk and whether there is a desire to transition the elected position to an appointed position in future years. And as it stands, the current office of the city clerk position has an expiration to the term of November 2020. That aligns with several council members as well. Council would need to give direction if there was a desire to see that appointment versus election process pursued, and it would be a measure that needs to be taken on as a ballot measure that the voters of Brawley decide. In instance, as in the others, it could be an item that is on the 2020 ballot with a future projection date of when that arrangement would end, or it could be timed with the election in and of itself. Okay, so those were the 4 topics that I wanted to touch on that have to do with ballot measures. And the 5th topic that's related to the election is just a general one, and this is probably the easiest of all of the topics, and it is that of polling places. We have been asked by the Department of Elections whether the city will be able to furnish polling locations this year. And typically on any given election cycle, the city does offer multiple locations that are at our city properties. And we have begun to explore, with the involvement of our city clerk, what some of those options could be on the go forward. I do want to note that this year, for November 2020, the election will be on the same night as a council meeting, regularly scheduled council meeting. We're looking at options that we currently can count on for staffed facilities, or easily facilities that we could easily disinfect in the COVID environment. And the initial feedback we've provided to the Department of Elections is that we could certainly offer a space at the Lyon Center. The Lyon Center is has really good bones for city staff to disinfect with materials and equipment that we already have on hand, because it's largely cement. Much easier space to clean after the fact, and we do have staffing at that property. Other locations in the past that have been used are the senior center and the library. We have expressed some openness to the senior center because the open space that they typically use is where the senior club meets, and we could somewhat readily disinfect it. But the property in and of itself is not in current use. So we'd either have to assign people to work out of that location for the day and to staff it from the morning into the evening, or decline that option at the senior center. The 3rd location is the library. I have had a chance to talk with Marjo Mello, our library director, at length. Because of the furniture, the books, the many surfaces, it is a much more challenging space to get clean again after a lot of foot traffic. We did propose some alternatives. If the council meeting weren't held on that night, we could potentially have a polling station at the admin office and somewhat easily staff and clean this property. It's a more confined space than the library. And we've also explored some other options with the Department of Elections for their consideration, nearby privately owned facilities that could be a fit for voting as well. So with that, I'm happy to receive any feedback you might have on the topic of the TOT, the utility user tax, sales tax, a sales tax increase, city clerk appointment versus election, and this notion of polling places in November 2020.
I think we can start, if I could, with maybe the easiest topic, right? And that's the polling places. I think that's the easiest one to discuss. I know it's challenging because if some of our facilities are not open, then it'll be a little bit challenging. Is it possible to have a limited space that's available for that, to where it makes it a lot easier just to disinfect and clean and all those sorts of things?
I think for 2 of the 3 locations, definitely. As I understand it, the Lyon Center space, typically what's used is the north side of the property where the council chambers used to be located. There's also the teen center option.
Right.
Or could we use one location, a larger location like the Lyon Center, and have it to where it's, if you will, like a multiple polling stop for people? Is that a possibility?
I think they tried
signage
to embed
like
in in particular precincts. So they're trying
Uh-huh.
a variety of locations,
So-
not send certain multiple precincts to one location.
Mm.
Rosanna, you mentioned the library. I didn't catch if you said the main branch or the Rio, Del Rio branch.
Is the main branch.
Okay, it seems like Del Rio's got more of a multi-purpose type room as part of it, that if people could be directed there specifically and kept out of other parts of the building, that might be pretty easy to disinfect. Am I wrong that room has a resilient floor, or is it carpet in there?
I think you're correct in your memory. But the issue with Del Rio is that it's not a fit for open traffic during a school day. We don't know what November will hold. It's possible that school will be in session, but not clear. And again, it's a precinct question. I'm sorry. Okay. So excuse me. Alma is noting that there was a desire to be in central Brawley.
Yes.
That's where their normal
Due to
locations
precinct.
are.
Yeah, I was picturing, something that's a little more accessible for east side residents, and something, on the west side as well, maybe to make it a little bit easier for people to go.
I think in general, what we're hoping to find out from the council is, are we on the right path working with the Department of Elections to support the activity? And trying our best to minimize the costs that are involved with staffing and cleanup.
I would say
Yes.
Yes.
yes. And I did share with Rosanna that usually on the voting day, a lot of times I think we've considered not holding a meeting or ending it early or something. So maybe that's an option also, to use our city hall chambers for voting. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that, but we could schedule our meeting on a different day.
I don't know if that would be an appropriate use of the facility, since our pictures are on the hallways, that kind of thing. So that,
That's a possibility. Yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think.
Thought about that one, George. That's true.
Yeah.
We also proposed, and we didn't call over first, but one of the alternative sites considered in the general area was Sacred Hearts Hall as potential also.
Unless they have school in session. They may
Maybe
have
the
school in-
ACC.
That could be a problem. That's too far out of the realm of the center city.
And
Gotta
I
be
think there are
center
some
city.
ADA concerns at that location
Yeah.
as well.
It's got to be center city too, I think. That's not
Tell me
necessarily.
again, you're
How
trying
many,
to
locations?
consolidate?
Oh.
Are you trying to consolidate everything into one, or?
No.
Yeah, how
No,
many locations?
we're open to working with them. There were 3 that were proposed, and where we landed was 2.
Mhm.
Well, I think what we should do what we can to accommodate that. It's pretty important to quite a few people. The people that are comfortable with mail-in ballots are already doing that, and as I think we've discovered with even with billing department, there are people that like to do things a very certain way, and if they're not allowed to do that, then they get upset, or they don't do it at all.
Right. We'll do everything we can to support civic engagement, and try our best to do it safely and mindful of the resources that we have.
Good.
I think the Lyon Center is probably the #1, but if you need another location, the second one, I guess, would be the senior center, if we could make arrangements to use that one.
Okay, great.
You might talk to the chamber too. I mean, they have the bigger room. I mean, maybe it wouldn't accommodate a lot of people, but with the 2, if they were able to do the lobby and the other section, it might work.
Maybe. Yeah, that's a great idea too. Okay, and on the other topics, if today isn't the night, we're certainly open as staff to hearing your feedback on those topics in the coming days as we get ready for July action items.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to bring up a couple of issues on those topics, if we could. I may need some
Go ahead.
before we do a vote. So On TOT, we're talking our current level is 8%. We've had a lot of requests over the years that I've been here as a council member to increase that. And I don't think we've ever really succeeded in doing that. What I guess my question is what are the other areas of our county, what are their TOT taxes like? And do we know that?
Yes.
I can definitely come back to you with a complete report, but what I can tell you from recent memory is that both the city of Imperial and the city of El Centro have had ballot measures regarding TOT. And the last maybe 5 to 6 years, Imperial was not successful, and neither was El Centro. El Centro, when I looked it up prior to the meeting, their current rate is 10%, and they were seeking a rate in excess of that.
What I would like to see us do is possibly go to 10% on that and put that on the ballot as a measure. To me, the TOT is paid by people that are visiting, that are renting motel rooms, that are not necessarily the residents of the city, although there's some usage, I think, by relatives of residents coming into town. However, to me, that tax is basically just on the room and the room rental. And to me, that would be that's less effect on the actual residents. So I see that as a positive. Also, we used to have requests from some of the motel owners in town to increase that tax because they saw a revenue generator for us that we don't really take advantage of in maybe the ways that we should. And I know that other areas like San Diego and other tourist areas, they have a much larger tax and they tend to make quite a bit of revenue off of that. But I would like to see us maybe ask for the 10%. If the residents don't want to do that, if the voters don't want to accept that, that's okay. At least we would know for sure, though, where we stand on that, because I think that would be a positive for us. And whether we use it for economic development or whether we use it for public safety or whatever, it does increase the revenue at least a little bit coming into the city. So that's my thought on it. As long as we don't exceed other areas in the valley in terms of amount, that's what I'm more concerned with.
What I could do is come back to you with a summary of what the TOT is in all cities in the valley as well as neighboring areas, and then
that would be great. Okay, and then that would give me an opportunity to vote on something that I have more information. I mean, or to direct something that I have more information on. My other one, let's see. I think we have to put the utility user tax back on the ballot simply because we do need that revenue. We see how important it is to us. It does go to the general fund. It does go to primarily, it helps out public safety, but also some of our other functions. I don't know, all the details on that yet. And I don't know how much, we want to do that or how long we want to do it for, but I do think we need to put that one back on. As far as sales tax revenue goes, on a personal level, I'm not really in favor of putting all 3 of those on the ballot all at once. I'd rather see us do the utility and the TOT and see if we're successful with those, and maybe for the future look at sales tax. I just think that right now with COVID and everything, we're in such a problem with revenue generation anyway with sales tax, that with businesses shut down and everything, that might not be as likely to pass as some of those other ones. And so that's just my thoughts. I'm only speaking for myself, just as a council member individually, not for the whole council as a whole. But that's my thought on that.
I tend to be in agreement with Sam on those particular issues. I will say the sales tax issue, with so many of our residents shopping in El Centro and their higher sales tax notwithstanding, I think we would be it would be quite a risk to place that on the same ballot with something that is kind of a necessity like the UUT. If the sales tax initiative were to fail, we go back to our regular sales tax. We don't really lose it. We don't stand to lose anything. If at the same time the UUT is rejected because people are just tired of taxes in general, and they look at it like, here you are placing all these taxes on the ballot, I'm just saying no to everything, we stand to lose, about $2 million or somewhere south of there. So I do agree with Sam. I think we would be pushing our luck to have any more than then probably those two together, the TOT, at a 10%, I think is certainly reasonable. That's still lower than a lot of cities charge on their transient occupancy tax. As far as the UUT, I think it would be a good idea to look at more modern utilities that people are using. And I also do think that based on the last election that the UUT was on, it passed with pretty overwhelming support. I think it would be nice to eliminate that sunset clause. We can always, you know, if times become so much better financially, we can always eliminate it in the future. But, you know, the fact that it comes back to haunt us every few years, I think people just get tired of seeing it and having to think about it. When it's on their bill, they know it's there, then they kind of forget about it, you know, and it still does the job that it's supposed to do. I know we're up against a lot of pressure this year because of COVID and the lack of funds that everyone's going to have. And in addition to that, some unrest within the community about, you know, what's that money going to? You know, you're clamping down on your different departments that the general fund supports. But my hope is that people will be understanding again this year as they were 3 years ago when it came to the UUT, because it's something that we rely on pretty heavily for the general fund. As far as the clerk position, you know, I think that really should be left up to the voters to decide whether they want that to be elected position or an appointed position. I don't know if there's a way to, you know, have as one of the candidates for city clerk to be to change it to an appointed position. In other words, you have candidate A, candidate B, and otherwise you can check the box that says you prefer for this to be an appointed rather than elected position, so that people can decide if they want to keep, you know, the current clerk in place, elect a new one, or change it altogether to an appointed position.
We can get the help of our city attorney to determine whether or not they can be on the same ballot or not. As I recall it, in prior discussions of the council, there was concern with running them at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Person running, it creates voter confusion.
Right.
Running at the same time as, you know, is there somebody running and is it going to be appointed or elected?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that might happen all the time for us as we're moving. I'm sorry, as we're moving through all this, that's going to happen every time. I think we may have to do it. I think we need to be clear though on the decision to make it. If the voters elected to make it an appointed, it doesn't affect that election at that point in time. It may happen for 2 years or 4 years or whatever it is down the line, not necessarily at that time.
Right.
I have a couple comments regarding the utility user tax. We've discussed it before, and it's been brought up not just from members of the public, but members of various city councils here in the city of Brawley, various members at different times. And so that does need to be formulated in a way, I think, that's more inclusive of today's technologies and that sort of thing. That's one. The other thing too is I would agree that we need to remove a sunset and see if people will support the utility user tax once it's explained on how that's used. It's so important to our city. Those funds that are nearly $2 million a year help the city function. Without it, we quite honestly wouldn't be able to in the way that we do today. So that's going to be really important. But the bigger challenge, I think, for all of us, for the city and the residents and for everybody, regardless of what we decide to do and what tax we move forward with or not, is getting information out there. That's going to be the challenging part. It's going to be the most difficult part because of COVID. I mean, it's restricted. I mean, we're having a Zoom meeting and not having one in person, you know? And so, yeah, social media and online technology is fantastic, but there's nothing like meeting people face to face, discussing with them, advocating for something. It's very, very challenging. So that's going to be, you know, we have to keep that in mind as we move forward. So just food for thought. With respect to the transient tax, I don't see that as being all that you know, how much can it possibly produce, you know, from what we're collecting now? And so I'm not sure if that's a solution to very much. I know that there's been discussion over the years from hotel operators actually advocating for a higher a transient tax. But again, I'm not sure how much that would generate for the city.
So the current projection for next year is 301,000.
Yeah, I know that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And if we were to increase it, what would it increase it to? So,
Right. And does it end up creating confusion with the utility user tax?
Right.
Those are all kind of things that would be in play at the same time.
I wonder if, you know, with the hub created, if that is an avenue, if it's appropriate to use that as a way to message and even take questions and give answers on the utility user tax.
Well, political advocacy can't occur on the hub. And it can't happen during employees' regular workday. A separate site would be needed to do political campaigning.
I think we can provide actual information.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What revenue does it generate? What services would be impacted if it were lost? Those types of things can be placed on.
Yeah, information items I think would be, if it's appropriate and legal, I think we should utilize what we do have in the way of social media.
Yeah, Roseanne, I'm just going to jump in on the heels of what George said. I don't know if George was done. Just I think let's be careful. If you mentioned 3 potential tax measures, I think we're taking a big risk. And I think, Luke, you mentioned it in the beginning as well. I think it's going to be really important we rally around the utility user tax. As we have in the past, other councils in the past, I think the fairly minor impact that TOT would have, if nothing else, would just put a competitive tax measure on the ballot, much less even discussing sales tax. So to me, those should be visited maybe a couple more years from now. Unfortunately, right now, we really need to go all in with utility user. It's tremendously important for all the reasons already mentioned. And I kind of also support what council said about technology, as well as eliminating maybe the sunset. We've already been talking about that. And there's a lot of important facts, I think, out there with reference to other cities that have utility user taxes in place. It's really important for, I think, our city to know. We're not asking per se for something completely new. It's been in place, but we're really in the middle of the road. There's some rumor out there that, you know, we have a huge dependence, but I think it works out to roughly about 13% of our general fund, I believe, give or take. I suppose, and I know there's cities out there where it's closer to 30% of their general fund. So. You know, that's an extreme, you know, that's on the high side, but I think it'll be important we put all these things in perspective and allows, I think, the public and advocacies groups to get out and, you know, put that important support together for November. So I would just, I guess I'm speaking to council, the notion of putting TOT and utility user, much less anything else, I think there's a big risk there for fairly minor gain on the TOT side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree pretty much. Rosanna and I had kind of talked about it, but you know, I wanted to see what the rest of you felt. But I'm in agreement that the utility user tax is really critical for us to continue with. And if we eliminate the sunset clause, that way we don't have to worry about it in the future. I mean, like I said, if later on we find that we don't need it, I mean, that would be great. You know, but I also agree that if we put too many taxes on different taxes on our ballot, that would kill any hope of getting this one passed. And the TOT tax, if people really understood it, it probably wouldn't have an impact, but they don't. They're just going to see it as a tax, another tax. So, and the sales tax also. So I'm pretty much in agreement, I think, with everybody that we should go ahead and give direction to put the utility tax on the ballot this go around.
Madam Mayor, the only thing I want to caution, just as you're sharing that, I know we've all kind of put in the input of eliminating the sunset, but also I think, and I think we're prepared to do. That's why we're discussing that. But I just want to make sure also the fact that we continue to bring it back to the voters, and I think it makes it clear based on history that's what it should have been and should be moving forward. But just making sure we as council are taking in consideration, there's probably a risk to that too, and an added measure of risk of the utility use for passing at all. There may be a segment of the population that agrees with the utility, but maybe holds out hope that we can wean ourselves off that. So I think it'll be important. Luke, I think you mentioned it about, we're echoing, look, if times are good, then, and I don't know if there's some way to build that in there. If there's some kind of financial metric that could be built in there that where there is a certain amount of general fund growth, or maybe margin, if you will, that would allow us to, at some point in the future, as a council, eliminate the tax, if that, or reduce the tax if that can happen.
Or reduce it, certainly, yeah. Which is something we've done, although we've had to go back to the public for it, we have reduced it. So,
right, good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, Donnie, about, the confusion that comes with even one other tax on there. And my thought was that I think combined, the extra revenue from increasing the sales tax and the TOT would be in a few $100,000 range per year, and which doesn't compare to, the almost 2 million, at least that we've talked about in the past for the UUT, and to, risk losing that even more so in the name of gaining a few $100,000 through increased sales tax revenues and TOTs, I think is probably not a great idea this time around.
Great.
Is there a number that we need to discuss, or is this just we're starting the ball rolling as far as percentage for the UUT?
So what would happen after today with the directions? My intent was to be sure that I summarized all the points that have been raised relative to potential ballot measures and topics in this election cycle, not to advocate for any one of them or all of them at once. So with the modernization language, what we would need to do is work with special legal counsel to get crafted the language. We did start this process, you may recall, in the last cycle of the utility user tax, but in the final analysis, the city chose to keep it narrowly defined with the prior technologies. So what I'm hoping to get from you tonight, and I really appreciate the feedback because it's exactly what's needed for staff to have its marching orders. We'll be working to develop language that ultimately will come to the council in July as actual ballot language. And then you'll either fine tune the language or approve the language, and then that action gets advanced to the Department of Elections and becomes the future language that voters will decide.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you want to clarify the question that came up about the city clerk, if you could have on the same ballot? Did you want to clarify that, or at this time, or you'll check with our attorney?
I can check with our attorney. I know what I think Councilmember Hamby was noting was giving voters options. Do you wish for this candidate, that candidate, or for it to be appointed? I don't know that all of those things could be accomplished in one item is presented. Probably more likely is if the council wished to undertake a ballot measure, you would define what year it would go into effect. So it could theoretically be something you put on the ballot now for to take effect in 2024. Or you could wait till the next election, which will be 2022, and then put it on for 2024.
I think it's important to consider something, and that is that, at least since I've been on council, that the city clerk is also served as the records administrator here, and that is a paid position. So I think there needs to be some clarity in that as well. And I don't know if people understand that. I think maybe even the council, as they came on board, maybe understood that the elected position automatically received that job role. So there needs to be, I think, clarification and a distinction on that. I don't think most people understand it. And, I think even amongst council members over time, there's been some confusion with that.
So if it were appointed, it'd be an appointee of an employee of the city at the city council's direction. So it'd be like the city attorney or the city manager, you would have the city clerk. That's what an appointed position would look like, as opposed to right now, it's an elected position of the city clerk that happens to be joined with a full-time permanent staff. Well, there's, no, but I'm saying they're joined conceptually.
So,
Rosanna,
to
is there
clarify that further, from what George started to say, the duties that the current city clerk has, those would all, whoever is elected or appointed to that position has those same duties, or is there a separation there? Alma takes care of certain duties that are not part of the clerk position that she is hired to do?
Okay, so as it stands right now, city clerk duties have to do with attending public meetings like tonight, and being the overseer of the public meeting format. The records administrator role that our elected city clerk also occupies, that particular role is a staff position that is overseen by the city manager. So what the ballot would do is say there's no elected and staff. The staff role would go away. There's no more direct report to the city manager. It is a appointed position of the council, and those duties would be combined. It'd be overseeing the meetings plus being the records administrator for all of our city operations.
Or we
I'm sorry, Sam, you dropped.
we could appoint a city clerk. We could appoint a city clerk, and we could separate the records administration from that city clerk position and have it be at a position that people apply for and they would be interviewed for and hired as a regular employee. Am I not mistaken in that?
Wouldn't it be the other way around? Where we would hire the records administrator, and part of that role would be to fill the city clerk position?
Mm-hmm.
We could do that. Yes, that would work. Yes, maybe I'm wrong in that, but still, it would be the city clerk's position would be an appointed position, but it wouldn't have the same functionality. Well, it would if you combined it. That's the only thing. That's where we seem to have a difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Right, and the historic roles, think how many years we had Janet Smith in the role and how they happened to be combined. And I believe at that time she reported directly to the council. So it's only since no, it was after there was another action that occurred as well. I'm sorry, I'm having a sidebar with our city clerk. Well, I would be happy to bring you kind of a chronology of what's occurred with the position and what it could look like. If that's of interest to the body, we can definitely do the research.
Yeah, I think for clarity, because yes, I think George is right. I think the majority of us at one point or another weren't really clear on the different, the combination of duties, and
right.
So some clarity would be helpful.
Yeah, and along that line, if we were to separate out the duties, does that wind up costing the city more in the long run, or exactly how that would work? And I think we just need to find out the details to understand whether even residents would prefer to have an appointed clerk as opposed to someone that's elected, that they have some control over who's in that position.
Just, I mean, I hate to ask the uncomfortable question, but let's just say things continued and somebody runs for city clerk, right, this next election cycle, and is elected to the city clerk position. What role would they serve?
Attending the public meetings, not necessarily occupying the records administrator
Okay,
position.
that's a good point.
And how does that, is that a paid, as a city clerk, it would be a paid position, like a part-time?
No, it's a stipend of
Okay,
$125 a month. So similar to the format that was originally, so remember this particular topic evolved in a similar way to that of the city treasurer, where the treasurer role was very figurative, and the council put on to a election ballot the appointment versus the elected distinction.
The way it's done now, Alma, in the course of her duties throughout the day, is able to handle the clerk duties in addition to her paid position,
Yes.
and which probably potentially makes things more efficient, I guess, than breaking it up.
I would think if we move ahead, and thank you, Roseanne, I was going to make that comment. This sounds kind of similar to the treasurer situation. And so also, I think it'd be helpful for council, just if, you know, kind of deferring to either you or our city attorney, that is there kind of like a city treasurer, are we antiquated in the fact that we're going to the electorate to re-elect the position when most jurisdictions, maybe of our size or whatever, do they quite commonly appoint? Not saying that we should dictate what we do just by what other people do, other cities do, but again, it sounds very deja vu to our, you know, the treasurer discussion. Is it pretty similar in that way? Are we just kind of holding on to an antiquated?
I think it's a common form. We can come back to you with a breakout at the state level, how many are elected versus appointed. I think that'd be helpful as data points. The distinction between city treasurer and city clerk is on the city treasurer front. Historically, from the beginning of the city treasurer literally carried out the responsibility of preparing every check. So, over time that was replaced with a department and a fully developed function that the city treasurer became much more of a figurative role than anything else.
Yeah. And if we do go with appointment, the electorate decides, that's, we can go to appointment just that they did with treasurer, then that, clearly in this situation, we're just, Alma will continue doing what she's doing, right? We're just essentially trying to look for a separation there where we don't have to go to the electorate every 4 years and have that position elected, correct?
Maybe or maybe not. It depends on.
Right. It depends. Right. I realize it, but this is more about the process. So, okay. Very good. Thank you.
okay.
Well, that's helpful. I think it's really clear to me what information I need to gather and prepare for the council. And if I can get that done between now and the next council meeting, I'll circulate it to you in advance and then also include it in the agenda packet. Some of these topics are kind of complicated to unpack. So I'm guessing the sooner you have the information that you're seeking, the easier it'll be to have the next discussion.
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the staff direction on those topics, and we'll be coming back to you very soon with additional information.
Okay. Thank you, Rosanna. Okay, we're going to move forward with the city attorney.
Our city attorney is present here at the admin office, and he will be joining us in closed session.
Oh, okay. City clerk, anything?
Any comments on that? Nope. Ms. Benavides has no comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mayor Howdy?
Anything else? Yes.
I'm looking for the perfect background image for this Zoom meeting, and I think I may have found one. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but if I just do right here,
That's a
like this,
perfect background. I like that
if
background.
I can do this, I think I
like
can
that.
stand with.
Did you have that behind you every meeting? Because that
I
would be
think
professional.
people would pay attention, right?
That's
George,
very-
you need to do this.
Could we do that for everybody? I mean, everybody just
Yeah.
have that background. Everybody just has that.
Sam and
That-
Luke, we could swear
Well,
in.
we took our oath. We swore, yeah, to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that's what we do, right? That's what we do.
That's it. See, that would be perfect if everybody had that as a background.
I think they'd like it, Sam. There you
Could
go.
we get a mural in the city just where we have that? I mean, a big mural or something.
We'll do it.
All right.
Okay.
Anyway, just to
Okay.
lighten
Well,
the mood.
that concludes our regular agenda items. So we're going to go ahead and take a little break and then call in for our closed session. And everyone should have gotten the phone number from Rosanna. Did everyone get the
Yeah.
email, the phone
Yes.
number? Okay. All right. How about a 5-minute break? Is that
Sure.
good? Okay.
That's fine.
Great,
We'll be
thank
back
you.
online. Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.